was pretty unprecedented. I thought it was like a sexy commercial. I mean, and it broke, I think, the iPod, but also broke that song. Vertigo came out in 2004, right? Like it was the same deal. And I'm sure there were people here and there who had their qualms of selling out and all that, but I mean, it just seemed like it really fit, and they did it in such an authentic way that it really kind of boosted both. And they had the U2 iPod, the black and red iPod. It just all kind of came together, in this way. And again, it's a funnel, right? You get the shine of U2 rubs off on the iPod. It brings more people into the Apple ecosystem, into the iTunes store. They're buying, eventually going to get iPhones and MacBooks and so on. And so, I mean, gosh, I'm really curious about the economics of that, of that deal, right? How much did Apple ultimately pay U2 for that? Because, honestly, it was a great deal for both of them. They could, YouTube could have done it for free and still would have been worth it. So, I think that really got the iPod, off the ground and moving, and Apple, and really kind of like underscored Apple's association with music, kind of indefinitely.
And I have some good backstory for that for you. A couple years ago, Bono did a interview with The Guardian, and he was doing a tell-all about each of these things. And what he said was this. He said they initially wanted to have their song in an Apple commercial the same way that they had with others. And Jobs and Bono were like, how like Drake and LeBron are like, oh man, I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. It's like, they want to be them. They want to be that. It's like, it was that whole thing that the two of them had for each other. But Jimmy Iovine was actually helping to discuss what was involved with some of these talks at the time. And the thing is, U2 had a few concessions before they just, gave the song away. They, in many ways, felt like, okay, this song, We Have Vertigo, I think will be perfect for Apple and to be able to be released here as an exclusive single that we have on iTunes. But one of their concessions was they didn't just want to have the music in the song with these black silhouettes. They wanted to be in the commercial. So of course there's a famous thing, like you're saying, Bono has his hand stretched out. Hello, how long? That whole thing, right? So they got that, and Jobs said, yes, fine for that. Then during those whole discussions, the band comes back and they says, hey, we don't want cash for this, but could you give us some Apple stock? And Jobs was like, no, that's a deal breaker. And then they're like, okay, all right, well, if you can't give us stock and we don't want cash, can you give us our own iPod version? Can you make it release our own iPod version? And then Jobs was like, wait, really? I mean, the iPod's white. You want this red? You want a black iPod? Like, people aren't gonna want that. But then he was like, all right, we'll take a risk. We'll see how it goes. I don't have the sales numbers, but it seems like that was how they ended up working things out. So it was the ultimate, hey, pay me for the exposure, pay me for this. You try to get a little bit more, and it just didn't quite get there. But imagine if U2 had gotten a bit of a stake in Apple there. Granted, Apple's a public company at that point, but like I said earlier, this is the point where this company is still much lower market cap than it was at, by the time it did. They definitely could have, 10x by the end of the decade. And then obviously now Apple is worth $2.3 trillion. So imagine that.
Yeah, even if they had just taken the cash payment and invested it in Apple stock, just through Fidelity or whatever, that probably would have worked out pretty nicely for them. And maybe better than the U2 iPod, although I'm sure that did well enough, right? I mean, if you look on eBay, actually, people are still selling those for like $150 or something. I mean, I think it's a bit of a collector's item.